an ex-police officer who lived there with his father who ran the pub. In the 1940s he watched as a little boy his father going down a tunnel. It was rooms big enough to accommodate a family side, you know, a man side by side to go down it. They went down there for about 10 minutes and then came back. So they saw a blockage halfway down and didn't go any further because they thought it was too dangerous to continue. It went in the general direction of the marketplace. They assumed more or less underneath the line of the arcade. The moved forward, 2 reports from there. My father's family had a shop there. That picture's there from the 1930s, 40s. The cellars underneath, my dad's auntie went in them in the 1920s, and there was a little bit that went backwards towards the church that they thought might have been a blocked up tunnel. When Dad moved there in 1940-ish, around there, he could see the block was there, but no one else wanted to investigate, so they didn't do anything about it. There were rumours from the early 1900s to have chains on the wall for prisoners and things like that. And there was a deeper cellar that had steps down to it, so maybe there is some sort of tunnel feature from there. The ropekeeper Phillips actually lived in their cellar. So what happened was, Mr. Phillips told me who his grandfather used to live there, and he said he remembers visiting the living room and where the kitchen was, and there were some more steps down into another layer. From a lady, her aunt lived in St Mark's Lane, and her aunt went from somewhere near, close by the governor's house, on a guided, some sort of guided tour, a bit much like we're doing today really. The guide said to them, stopped halfway what was reported to be the marketplace. He said to them, do you know where you are now? And it was supposed to run from the church to the governor's house or around that sort of area. So in the late 1890s or early 1900s there were actually people doing tours, and whether there were actually 2 reports from Appleton Gate, one from underneath Kevin Porter's butcher's shop opposite the palace. You all know where that is. Both his father and him have both talked to me about that. There's some sort of arch-shaped feature underneath, but it's now all bricked up and all tiled over. It's definitely some sort of large feature that was definitely noticeable from under their back cellar. And the other one is from the probation office in the cellars. That used to be where Mr. Bowler from Peel and Bowler's chocolate place lived, and apparently there was some sort of metal gate in the cellar that led to some sort of passageway, but it was blocked in. It's in the cellar in that building here on the corner by the church, close to the church. So it's supposed to head in the direction of the church, this passageway. But they're currently digging up flints that are they're field walking and finding flints that are 12,000 years old. Small Roman settlement to the north in the Northgate area, top of the Northgate where the retail park is, where home base is, that sort of area. The name Newark comes from the word Newark, meaning new fortification, new defensive system, built by the Saxon royalty in the end of the 9th century, around there, so end of the 800s, early 900s, say. The land around Newark at the time of the Norman Conquest, which was, what date was the Norman Conquest? Thank you. Was given to the bishops of Lincoln. So it was the bishops of Lincoln that first built the castle as a residential fortification, residential palace if you like. There's some fragments in the church that's from the 1180s, again built around the same time as the castle. And it was them that actually formed the original plan of Newark as it is now. This sort of line forms essentially the medieval core of the town. At one time there was a medieval wall and ditch all the way around the town, and it was the bishops of Lincoln that would have planned it as pretty much as you see today. The archaeologists tell me that Newark's quite important. It's a very early Norman street plan and hasn't changed much since the first laying out of it. So it's pretty much as it was designed to be, even today. You've got 3 coaching inns. The old White Hart, that was very painted, coloured, timber frame building. You've got lots of building site underneath. Very ornate building. It's built in, that frontage is built in the 1400s, late 1400s. And the archway you can see, or the passageway you can see, is where the coaches would have driven through. We've got the Saracen's Head immediately to the front of us. Columns are something called Truscott columns. Apparently you can tell which type of columns they're after you read them, depending on what scrolls and when they've got names and things like that. Tells you a lot of classifications now. But I realised so that colonnade beam is called the piazza, designed architects in the early 1700s. The building that you see today is from the early 1700s. The similar sort of age, again, it's got this colonnade piazza running at the bottom, and you've got white sort of sandstone columns going up front of it. When you view it from away, because it's got the pediment or the triangle at the top, it looks quite classical. So it could be resembling kind of a Roman or Greek temple. The square stones you see in the colonnade by the archway, and those round the windows, the first floor windows, they're called beautification. Apparently the famous architect called James Gibbs designed them like that. And James Gibbs rustication, who made a speech from that window there. Okay, we're now going to go underground. There's a potted history of coaching inns. Just one more thing, there's another coaching inn in the far corner called the Queen's Head. It's just behind the Tony and Guy building in that corner there, white timber frame building. Built in the 1500s, named after Elizabeth I. Yeah, no, you're fine. I've got a question here. Yeah.
Is that all of us? Hi, so my name's Genevieve and I work for Trenton Peak Archaeology. We're an archaeology company based in Nottingham, and we kind of got to know the Heritage Group when we did a ground penetrating radar survey on the marketplace, which is a sort of survey technique which sends down radar signals into the ground, and it can detect either solid material like walls, or it can detect voids like tunnels or cellars. So we did that survey earlier in the year, and we found quite a lot of traces of cellars underneath the marketplace, but no sign of tunnels as yet. We are doing another survey in the next couple of weeks on Castlegate and Bargate, so you never know, that might get some more positive results. So the Clinton Arms was famously frequented by a gentleman called John Nevison. His nickname was Swift Nick, and he was a highwayman, a bit like Dick Turpin, and he used to kind of operate from the Clinton Arms with his band of 6 outlaws, and they'd go up and down the Great North Road, which kind of goes all the way from down south up to York. This is the story that he committed a robbery down in Kent early in the morning one day, and then jumped on his horse and basically galloped up 200 miles all the way to York in a single day. On arriving in York, he booked himself in at a coaching inn and went out onto the bowling green where he saw the Lord Mayor playing bowls. Don't worry, we're fine. He challenged the Lord Mayor to a game of bowls and made a bet with him about the outcome of the match. And then he made sure that he got the Lord Mayor to record the time that he made the bet, which was 8 o'clock in the evening. When he went to court, the jury wouldn't believe that he could have committed a robbery in the morning in Kent and then been up in York by 8 o'clock, so he was let off. So where we're coming from now is one side of the Clinton Arms complex, which all has these original Georgian cellars underneath, which are all kind of early to mid 18th century. Now, the 18th century bits that you can see here are these vaulted brick kind of mini tunnels that go through across to the other side of the Clinton Arms complex. We can look down this one in a minute, and then we'll actually walk down the one parallel to it, which is clear. As you can see, there's been a lot of later additions to the original vaults, and that's kind of been the case throughout this complex, so everything's quite compartmentalised now, and there you can see like the fat, sort of clean looking bricks and modern partitions. But originally we think these cellars would have been used for access between the other bigger cellars, but also for something like beer or wine storage. It's nice and cool down here. And obviously you've got an inn upstairs, so you probably keep your beer and wine in barrels. You'd come down with a jug and fill it up, rather than bottled beer and wine sort of took off a bit in the 17th century. So this is like one of the sort of main vaulted cellars, which would have run kind of all the way along the length of the Clinton Arms complex, with these kind of modern partitions like that one and that one placed in. These have been placed in later when they've been partitioned off for individual shops that have taken up the retail complex. The lowest courses of kind of the external sides of all these cellars are made of stone, unlike the rest of it, which is obviously brick. There's some suggestion that, you know, why use stone when the rest of it's brick. There has been a suggestion that there might have been earlier cellar foundations here that have been reused when they constructed this one, but we can't really tell at this stage. We'd like to conduct a proper survey to see if there is like an earlier stone version, or whether it's just that, you know, stone was also a building material used by the Georgians and they've just used that on the lowest parts of the cellar. This, what's going on here is a little bit unusual, and you can see it slightly better when we go through to the other side, which we will do in a minute, but there seems to have been brickwork all the way down to the bottom, so there might have been the modern brickwork, so there might have been a... So I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of foods that people would have been eating in the Georgian period and before. We've got exotic poor food really, but one important invention of the late 17th century was muslin cloth, which is used to make steamed puddings. Steamed puddings forms like pretty much every meal in the Georgian period: meat puddings, sweet puddings, and vegetables. So we've got vegetables like parsnips, which have been around like for a really long time. These have been readily available and grown widely around here as they are today. Anybody got any idea when potatoes would have become available in this country? So it's about 15 something, late 16th century I think, and they come from America. So Georgians would have had those. Carrots. So Sorry. Orange carrots would have been available from the 16th century, but does anybody know what colour they used to be
Blue.
before that?
White.
Purpley blue.
Yeah, purple, black and orange, so orange, not purple, black and white. It became orange because of bananas.
Oh gosh, going later, I always think.
Were only widely introduced into this country in the 1900s, so very young indeed. This is a common problem that would have inhabited. I was in Nottingham Caves last week and I saw a rat skeleton. Anyway, that's another story. That's another story. Another kind of quite widespread part of the diet in the 18th century would be gin and brandy, which could be produced extremely cheaply and drunk by everybody from children upwards, and cause a lot of health problems. And drunkenness and probably criminal behaviour like Swift Nick. But yeah, I think diets for most people, whether you're rich or poor, were quite unhealthy for different reasons. People also had a nasty habit of putting poisons into their food. For example, they'd dye things like sweets green with lead. They use copper and lead to dye cheese rind, which becomes poisonous. They used a substance called alum to whiten their bread, which is also poisonous. So they were kind of doing themselves quite a lot of damage. I've got in here some of the kind of things people would have had, on their table. Pewter. These things here are replicas from the museum, which have kindly lent us. Pewter would have been quite a common material for tableware, although glass had been used since Roman times. It wasn't really kind of widely available until the late 17th century with the invention of lead glass, and even after that it wouldn't have been like a common drinking vessel until much later. So I can pass these around. And then in here, and this is a cooking pot as well. And this one, which is made out of horn. Really nice. And then I've also got to pass around these things here, which are original objects which have been found sort of on site from, I think they're all like sort of 18th or some might be 19th century, but it's like a clay pipe in there. Everybody would have smoked pretty much, leading to further health problems. And this one's an original as well, original stoneware jug.
That's lead. Yeah.
Would that have been efficient?
No, that would be making.
Yeah, it's just I was wondering what that. I think it is
Replica bread.
This will crumbly up.